Welcome to the multi-paddle roundup review number 2, where I'll give you guys some more condensed, to-the-point reviews of some of the paddles that I've been testing lately. Like my other roundup reviews, I'll also be doing a giveaway as part of this video, with the winner getting their choice of any paddle seen in this review, so stick around to the end to find out how to enter that giveaway. And as a last item of business, each of the paddles talked about here can be purchased through this channel's discount code, which saves you some money and gives us a small commission, which enables me to keep making videos like this and is greatly appreciated. Let's start things off with the new paddles coming out by Pickleball Apes, the Gen 3 Pulse series. Without a doubt, these are going to go down as some of the best paddles of the year, but probably not for what you expect. Not only are these the first aramid fiber paddles to incorporate Gen 3 construction, but the Gen 3 Pulse series are some of the most easily controllable, pleasantly feeling, and most vibration dampening paddles I've ever tested. This may come as a bit of a surprise because I think a lot of players still associate that Gen 3 label, which is essentially any paddle that utilizes extra use of foam in their construction, with power. The Pulse series, however, like the Kiwi Circuit or the Nexus Prostar, utilize foam in a way that takes advantage of Gen 3 construction benefits in ways that do not necessarily over-magnify power. The Pulse paddles absorb and pocket the ball in such a way that I can say I have literally never hit with a paddle I felt was smoother and had less vibrations with. This will be great for people who like a more plush feel and for people who suffer from inflammatory conditions such as tennis elbow that are aggravated by quick vibration shooting up the arm. The Pulse series doesn't feel exactly like the mods or the YOLOs or the ripples per se, with one difference being that with those paddles you can really feel the ball recoil off the face. While the Pulse series still sort of sucks in the ball, it doesn't launch it off the face quite as well, leading to such good levels of control. And as one more notable difference, you can certainly tell a difference in sound between the new Pulse series and those other ripple and mod type power Gen 3s. The Pulse series comes in 3 shapes, which include the 2 shapes of the original Proline Energy series, which are the extra elongated and the hybrid shapes, and they also now have introduced their first wide body paddle, the Pulse V. Each version of the Pulse is more stable and forgiving than their previous Proline Energy models, which is actually very interesting because if we compare numbers of the original hybrid shape Proline Energy S, for example, to the new Pulse S, the Pulse S actually has a lower recorded swing weight, twist weight, and balance point, as well as an overall quicker rating on the maneuverability scale than the original Proline Energy S, albeit by a short margin. So you would expect the new Gen 3 model to move quicker, but be a bit less stable in return. This is definitely not the case, and is an illustration of a good point that as paddle construction changes, the statistical analysis of things like twist weight don't necessarily correlate to the same level of, say, sweet spot size or stability as you move from paddles made from different face materials or different core components, because the Pulse series are certainly more stable than their predecessors were. And keeping that in mind, it makes it all the more impressive that the wide-bodied Pulse V came in with a twist weight of 7.63, and that was measured stock. This is the single highest twist weight of any paddle that I've personally tested, a title that was previously held by the Spartus Apollo at 7.53. A twist weight like that on a paddle with this construction is reflective of a paddle with a ginormous sweet spot, probably the largest sweet spot of any paddle I've used to date. And on top of that, all 3 paddles in the Pulse series have been spinning incredibly well, with RPMs measuring in my very high range. And I like the terminology that Justin from Pickleball _Etc. used in conversation when he said that they have a, quote, control-oriented all-court play style, because these paddles still have a decent but not overly high power on harder swings, but really do excel in control. If I were to put a one-liner to describe each of the paddles in this series, I would say that the wide-body Pulse V is the control king and carries the industry's best sweet spot. The Pulse S has a large portion of the control of the Pulse V, with the added benefit of a little more reach in its hybrid shape, and this is the one that I personally like to use the most. And the Pulse E is the most powerful of the 3 here, but is certainly less stable than its other 2 counterparts in its long, knife-like shape. These paddles go live on October 24th, And if the paddle industry has taught us anything lately, it's that popular paddles seem to go very quickly, and I wouldn't be surprised if these paddles sell out lightning fast. I literally have no idea what the stock is like that Pickleball Apes has built up for these paddles, but if you do decide to get one, you can use this channel's discount code and take 10% off the purchase price. Next in the lineup is the long anticipated release of Volair's Control 1 and Control 2 Kevlar paddles. If you're like me, you may be thinking that Volair is a little on the later side in releasing Kevlar paddles, and maybe that's true, but these new models actually bring some interesting changes that may be appealing to a large fan base of the Mach 1 and Mach 2 𝑑𝑨𝑏𝑫𝑳𝑬s, and honestly, if you've played with many Kevlar paddles at this point, the changes here are probably what you'd expect. Both of these two paddles are a little more stiff feeling, have higher plow-through drive power, and have a little more of a crisp pop than their previous carbon fiber predecessors had. Both of these two Kevlar paddles also seem to have improved sweet spots when hit side by side their carbon fiber comparables, and particularly for the Control 2, I would say it's in a very elite group at the top of the paddles I've tested for both sweet spot size and stability. Despite their improved pop and power, both of these paddles have also demonstrated an improvement in hand speed and have recorded small, but noticeable improvements in the direction of speed of their maneuverability scores. I haven't measured RPMs on these paddles yet, but I'll say that just subjectively so far, it does seem that the increased pop and power has made a slight trade-off for spin, and though they both spin pretty well, I don't think these more crisp Volair paddles are going to be the absolute kings of spin like the previous Mach 1 and Mach 2 𝑑𝑨𝑏𝑫𝑳𝑬s were. Ultimately, these are both really good paddles, and I don't even care that they're a little late to the Kevlar game. These are clearly going to be good choices for people who liked the Mach 1 and 2 𝑑𝑨𝑏𝑃𝑔𝑒, but want an improvement in pop and power that those previous models couldn't provide. Next on our list is the Hudef Luxary Gen 1. Despite its name, the Luxary Gen 1 is actually a fully thermoform paddle that most people would refer to as a Gen 2. It's also elongated and comes in at an industry rare 18 millimeters thick. I think the attempt here is essentially to create a more budget-friendly version of the Selkirk Lux, and I actually think Hudef has been pretty successful at accomplishing that here. For those people who've played with the Lux before, most of the things you experienced with the Lux can be expected from the Hudef Luxary Pro Gen 1 as well, with a couple exceptions. The first of which is that the Luxary Gen 1 is over 50% cheaper after the use of discount codes. The other difference I feel here is the Luxary Gen 1 is actually quite a bit more light feeling than the Lux, with a lower swing weight and a quicker maneuverability score, and also I'll say the sweet spot is just a tad smaller than the Lux too. It's got a pretty nice, softer feel, and it certainly excels in control. Pop is definitely on the lower side, and power's a bit on the lower side too, so this is definitely going to be a paddle for people who like control paddles. There's primarily one big concern that I have with the Luxary Gen 1, and that's pretty much the same concern I have with a lot of the current Selkirk paddles, including the Lux, and that's that they use spray-on grit for texture and spin on top of a more smooth surface. I haven't used mine enough yet to wear out its grit per se, but without exception, paddles I've tested in the past that do rely on this spray-on grit method for its texture and spin inevitably wear out faster than paddles that use other methods, so this is something you're going to need to keep in mind if you're thinking about purchasing this paddle. Next up on our list is the Beatnik Hyperbeat 2. This paddle has a few things going for it, with one of the nicest things being price, as it falls under $100 after discount codes, making it the most affordable paddle in today's roundup video. It's a Gen 2 thermoform paddle in a hybrid shape, and people either seem to love or hate this part, but it comes stock with that ridged grip, of which I'm personally a fan. I also noticed it's been mentioned on a few review videos so far as one of the top budget paddles or one of the top paddles under $100, but for me, I'm not quite sure it's that good just yet. So far in testing, I thought it played decent. It didn't really stand out in any way and sort of just played middle of the road in almost every way. This is probably great for people who sort of want a more balanced paddle, and it certainly has the pros already mentioned, but for me, it didn't really have a wow factor or something that made me think something along the lines of, oh, you like a paddle that does this really well? Try this paddle. In terms of plushness, the face is a bit more on the stiff feeling side, and the sweet spot was again just kind of average. I do think I'm going to try and find the time to make a top 5 paddles under $100 video again. Let me know in the comments below if that's something you'd like to see, But there are some seriously good and unique paddle options in this price range right now, so if the Hyperbeat 2 does make a run for that top 5 or top 10 list, it would be for more of a balanced type paddle option with a really cool look. Next on our list is the 11SIX24 Alpha 1. I'll be honest right now and say that I seriously have no idea if this paddle is going to be in production for sales to the general public or not. And that's in no way a dig on 11SIX24. In fact, it's quite the opposite. If you enjoy talking about upcoming paddles and people's testing experiences, there's probably no Discord channel that's more active than the 11SIX24 thread on the Pickleball Studio Discord. David and his team are constantly evaluating and re-evaluating their paddles to come up with the best production level models they can, which has led to some of the best paddles out there, like the Monarch Jelly Bean or the 𝐋𝐢𝐬𝐬 X Control Plus. So if you really want the up-to-date information on 11SIX24 in real time, David's very active on that thread and posts updates almost daily. As far as the Alpha 1, it uses a 3-layered carbon fiber fiberglass carbon fiber layering system, and it shares the same shape as the 𝐋𝐢𝐬𝐬 X Control Plus models, and like those models, it utilizes a simple and sleek look. In terms of how it plays, I actually thought the changes in the Alpha 1 in comparison to the 𝐋𝐢𝐬𝐬 X Control and Control Plus were subtle, but definitely there, and that the Alpha 1 had slightly better plow-through power than the other two elongated 𝐋𝐢𝐬𝐬s, and I felt the plushness was somewhat comparable to the Kevlar 𝐋𝐢𝐬𝐬 X Control, but I'd say the plushness was maybe dialed up a 0.5 out of 10 in comparison. In light of the new USAPA coefficient of restitution testing, the Power Paddles 11SIX24 have been on a bit of a slowdown. And while the power paddles have been put on somewhat of a back burner while the coefficient of restitution testing nuances are sussed out, it is seeming more and more likely that the Alpha 1 may actually make it to production. And while I didn't think the changes were super huge moving to the Alpha 1, it does seem like this is going to be a good paddle for people who want just a touch more drive speed power than the other 𝐋𝐢𝐬𝐬 elongated paddles have, while still maintaining a more plush feeling face. The Nexus Prostar also made its way through my testing over the last few weeks, and this paddle isn't new to the market, but it was new to me, and I'm happy to say that I enjoyed testing this paddle, and I think there's a good chunk of people that this would be a good fit for. First off, about its construction, it's definitely a first of its kind and utilizes a carbon fiber polyester blend face material, which is formerly known as titanium, and depending on how you classify Gen 3 paddles, this would qualify in the same way that the Spartus Olympus does, as the Prostar also filled each individual core cell with foam, just like the Olympus did. So while the Gen 3 Pickleball Apes Pulse series are the first to utilize Gen 3 construction processes with Kevlar, the Prostar is the first Gen 3 paddle that utilizes polyester, at least to my knowledge. I was actually surprised at how well it felt when I played with it, and it does a nice job at absorbing the ball between the poly fibers and the foam-filled cells, but still maintains a great drive speed on bigger swings. If you're a person who regularly plays with elongated paddles or even hybrid paddles, this is probably going to be an easy paddle to get used to playing with, which is what I experienced. In terms of playstyle category, I would say the Prostar is somewhat between the Encore and Power categories, depending on whose hands it's in. One knock on the Prostar previously has been its weight, which makes sense with all the foam-filled cells, and since receiving this feedback, Nexus has actually separated their paddles that are above 8.3 ounces into their own heavyweight category and offers them at a cheaper price. The normally weighted Prostar I received had a gross weight of 8.17 ounces, a swing weight of 120, and a maneuverability score rating of 63, giving it a heavier feel than roughly 2/3 of the paddles out there, but more maneuverable than 1/3 of the paddle out there, which puts it in the same ballpark roughly as the bread and butter Shogun, and lighter than the Hudef Viva Pro Gen 3. I still wouldn't classify it as a light feeling paddle by any means, so if that's something that you need, this is definitely not it. But this is a really great example of a solid elongated paddle with some cool new tech and a nice plush feel, and I think a lot of people are going to enjoy playing with it. One more paddle I'll put on here is the MC-3 by Stinger Pickleball. Though the MC-3 is early in my testing process, this is a paddle I think people should put on their radar for a few reasons. This is one of just a few elongated shaped paddles that's achieved a twist weight over 7, and that's with a gross weight of just 8.0 ounces, and as such, it plays incredibly stable. It's notable that the select few other elongated paddles to be able to achieve that high of a twist weight stock are either wildly heavy or much more expensive in comparison, as it appears the MC-3 is also going to come in just north of that $100 mark after the use of discount codes. It uses 18K carbon fiber and sort of reminds me of what a less expensive chorus shapeshifter would be like if it could produce stronger levels of power. This paddle's pretty new and hasn't even been listed on Stinger's website yet, but when it does, I'll post a link to it in the description below so you can check this paddle out as a good option for an elongated paddle that's ultra stable, comes in at a good friendly price, and is able to produce good power. And now I'll just share a quick look at some of the reviews and releases that are upcoming that I didn't mention already because I'm waiting for the paddles to be delivered. The first is 3 new paddles by Engage set to be released on November 1st, including Engage's first thermoform paddle, the Evolution Aero, the hybrid-shaped Pursuit V2.0, and a fiberglass paddle called the Encore Pro V2.0. I can't yet speak to how these paddles play firsthand, but I do know that all 3 of these models are going to be listed at cheaper prices than the current Pursuit Pro series, and you can further reduce the price of these paddles by 20% by using the first discount code that this channel was ever given, actually before it was a channel at all, and that's the 20 Dustin discount code. The Neonic Flare Prime X is set to release on November 5th. This is after the initial launch date was pushed back, when the first batch of these paddles wasn't quite as powerful as their testing models had shown them to be. Neonic actually decided to keep those lower power paddles from the first batch for the time being and sell them at a lower cost, and that's how the Neonic Flare Prime, without the X in the name, came to exist. The Neonic Flare Prime X is supposed to be much more powerful and come in as one of the lowest cost power paddles on the market. So I'll let you know my thoughts on that one. The Kiwi Circuit's also headed this way, which is also a Gen 3 paddle that is not power oriented. The Circuit is already released for consumer purchase, so it's not exactly new to the market, but it will be new to me. I've been getting a lot of questions about it, and I do think it's going to be a necessary addition to my testing in order to truly round out what's being offered by Gen 3 paddles right now. It also looks really cool, so I'm excited to see what that one has to offer. And that's the end of roundup number 2. I hope this was all helpful. Thanks for watching, and here's the details of how to enter that giveaway. For this giveaway, we'll be offering as a prize any paddle reviewed in this roundup, which includes the paddles from the Pickleball Apes pull series, either of the Volair control paddles, the Hudef Luxary Gen 1, and all the others. To enter the giveaway, like and leave a comment under this video, subscribe to the Pickleball Medicine YouTube channel, and fill out the Google form in the description below so I have a way of contacting you if you're chosen as a winner. Winners will be published 1 month from the video's release date, so good luck in the giveaway and thanks for watching.